Hello everybody, we're going to do chapter 17, Behavioral Economics and Risk-Taking. That's right, it brings us right in here. We're going to need to answer at least 15 questions, score at least 1,100 points. We're going to try the activity as a student, and let's start answering the questions. Amanda needs to buy a new car for work. She has one day to find a car, was able to read only one article about new cars before she went to the dealership. Which of the following options describe how bounded rationality is at work in this situation? It's going to be hard for her to make a fully rational decision. I know this answer. Amanda feels pressured by time. That's an example of bounded rationality. And Amanda also, well, she wants to buy a good car. That's not bounded rationality. Amanda has a limited amount of information. That's part of bounded rationality. And down here, she made an effort to gather information. She did not make an effort. No, she made some effort, just didn't have much time. After all, we often have to make decisions inside of a limited amount of time. I think we're going to get this question right, too. False or true? A risk-neutral person will refuse to take a gamble with any risk. Couldn't be more false. Let's go on to the next question. Oh, here we have somebody. In experiment, children were given a marshmallow and were promised a second marshmallow if they could wait 15 minutes to eat the first one. Only about 1/3 of the children earned the second marshmallow. What does this experiment illustrate about children's rationality? Well, it seems like a problem with difficulty with intertemporal decision making. It's hard, and many of us, you know, it's funny. We're often the kid, right? We could either have $40 this week, or we could put it aside and become a millionaire in time, and many of us, even though we say we'd like to be wealthy, we have problems with hyperbolic discounting or intertemporal decision making. A company has a 401k savings plan for its employees. The participation rate will be about the same. Other people are given an easy enrollment form to fill out or are enrolled automatically but given an easy opt-out form to complete if they don't want to participate. Actually, that's false. People that are given an opt-out form are more likely to enroll. So let's go with false. Next question. And keep it at 100. Oh, we're doing good, folks. Let's keep it up. Back to questions. I know this one. Two people are playing an ultimatum game with 100. Player 1 can make an offer to player 2 who can either accept or reject it. If player 2 accepts, they split the money according to player 1's offer. If player 1 offers $2 to player 2 and keeps the other 98 to themselves, what does traditional economic theory say player 2 will do? Player 2 will accept the offer according to traditional economic theory, even though behavioral economics says otherwise. All right, 5 questions in a row. We're on a roll. Let's do it. Darius is offered a choice between 2 gambles. Pay $100 and win 110, no matter whether it comes up heads or tails. So the value of that game is 110. Well worth paying $100 to play. Or pay $100 and possibly win 120, or possibly only get $70. So the value of $120 on heads, since it comes up 50% of the time, is worth 60, and the value of $70 on tails is worth 35, or half of 70, which when we add 60 plus 35 together, that's $95. So definitely the 110 guarantee is better than the 95 value of the second game. However, since Darius chooses number 2, that shows he has an attitude that means he's a risk taker. All right, good. Here we are. The diagram shows an ultimatum game in which player 1 decides how to share 1,000. Player 1 could make a fair proposal and they would both accept it. Or if player 2 rejects the fair proposal, neither one gets anything. Player 1 could also offer a terribly unfair proposal where player 1 says, I'll keep $9.99 and you get $1. And player 2 could reject that, where neither one of them would get anything. So in terms of traditional economic theory, player 2 would be irrational to reject that one. But traditionally, something is better than nothing, so traditional would say that it would be irrational for him to reject this one as well. However, let's make an editorial comment. Just because this particular interpretation of the question says that it would be irrational for player 2 to reject $1 when offered to him, even though he knows player 1 is going to get $9.99, I have an alternative way to think about it that's not in the book, and that is that player 2 doesn't really care about the money, the dollar, as much as they care about the what they can buy with the dollar. After all, when we spend money, we're trying to gain utility, and the amount of utility that you gain from rejecting player 1 when they offer you only $1 is a lot of utility. You get a lot of fun from ruining player 1's day. After all, they tried to offer you $1. So I would explain it that way, which is very rational. But let's go into the next question. All right, we're on level 3. Way to go. Back to questions. Okay, it looks like they're getting tougher. Jorge considers himself a risk-averse person. He takes the opportunity to switch to a new job where there's two possible outcomes. Either there's a 20% chance he'll earn $30,000 more per year, which is worth $6,000, 20% of $30,000, or there's an 80% chance he'll get laid off and end up with a job that earns $10,000 less than his current job. So 80% times 10,000 is a negative 8,000. So if we put the negative 8,000 together with the positive 6,000, we end up with a net gain, a change of a loss of $2,000 compared to his current job. Now, he says he's a risk-averse person, but he's taking a big risk taking this on this new job. So actually, his assessment himself as risk-averse is incorrect. He is a risk taker. Let's keep it 100. Nice. Okay. Now let's try this one. Wayne has a good salary and wants to have a comfortable retirement, but always seems to spend his entire paycheck. Well, he's like that little kid with the marshmallow. He's falling prone to intertemporal decision-making. Next one. A survey about the weather first asked respondents how often it has rained, then asked them if they believe there's been a drought. This is an example of either the priming effect or the framing effect. Let's think about that for a second. We'll go down to the next one. A driver is reluctant to get rid of a car that turned out to be a bad buy, even though she could then buy a better one. That's an example of loss aversion. Very good. Now, here's where we wonder, can we change it because we're only partially know? No, we're going to have to keep it up here at I know it. It's worth 100 points. The question is, right, is the survey that first asks questions about has it rained, is that an example of the priming effect, or is it a framing effect because they have it laid out there? In order to answer this question well, but best, we should click on our little book and go right to it. We don't have to guess. We can see here about this, and priming effects are in order of a question influences the answers. That's the priming effect. So, since they asked how often it's rained first, and then asked if there's been a drought, that's an example of the priming effect. So that's a pretty good bet. Now, if we go down to the framing effect, which occurs when answers influenced by the way a question is asked or a decision is influenced by the way alternatives are presented. So since there isn't anything about framing in that way or alternatives, we're going to go with priming effect. Put it over there. We got it right. Nice job. Okay, cross that out. Let's go in here. Two similar groups of about 300 people each took the same survey, except that the order of the questions differed for each group. One question was answered yes by 75% of one group, but only 50% by the other group. What might have happened? All right, so this is a good example of what we were just looking at, right? Is the difference due to status quo bias? No. Is the difference due to intertemporal decision-making? No reason to believe so. And could the difference be due to priming effects or to framing effects as far as alternatives go? Definitely, because the question is changed this way. I'm going to go with that. And that's the real question. Is it a framing effect as well? One question answered yes by one. Could it have been that the framing effect was altered? So let's go back to that, try to make sure we understand the difference between framing and priming. So here we are. Let me see framing effect, where an answer is influenced by the way a question is asked or a decision is influenced by the way alternatives are presented. Consider an employee-sponsored plan. Doesn't seem to be anything about the framing effect here. We're going to go down here, and we got it right. That's a tricky one, but we got it right just the same. 10 in a row, got some bonus points, doing swell. Great job. Score can't go below where we are, and back to questions. Oh, we made it to the target score, so now we're just going to make sure we answered enough in order to get 1,500. So we don't have to risk anything more now, but we might as well pretty sure, or whatever. Mary decides not to leave her current minimum wage job for a higher paying job. She knows the ropes at her current job, knows how to deal with her coworkers. She fears having to adapt to a new situation and to know a new set of people. What inconsistency in decision making might cause this? Mary could be exhibiting loss of, no, let me see. Status quo bias because she wants to maintain her current work environment. That's good to go. Mary values keeping her current wage and familiar coworkers more than the opportunity to enhance her welfare. This is an example of loss aversion. and lose her friends. In this scenario, traditional economic theory assumes Mary would choose to accept the higher paying job, but the field of economics helps us understand why people's decisions sometimes contradict standard assumptions about rationality is called behavioral economics. Good. All right, just a couple more questions. I think we're doing all right. Sean is buying a lottery ticket for a Fantasy 5 game in which players try to predict which 5 numbers will be drawn out of the numbers 1 through 39. Since the number 17 hasn't been drawn in the last 60 days, Sean feels it's due to be drawn and therefore is a good number to bet on. Is Sean right? No, Sean is incorrect. This is an example of the gambler's fallacy. Sean believes that the number 17 is overdue, and the fact his recent history makes the number 17 equally likely to be drawn compared to other numbers. And there we go. Michael has all his money in an investment portfolio that was moderately risky. The stock market fell and caused him to lose a lot of his money. In response, he then invested in a portfolio with a much higher potential payoff but a lower expected value. How might an economist explain Michael's behavior? Fill in the blanks to complete the pattern. Sounds like he's going with the gambler's fallacy. Traditional model of risk behavior assumes that people are rational in their consistent in their risk-taking preferences. According to the traditional model, Michael should maximize utility based on a rigid calculation of expected value. However, Michael's change in behavior caused by the fall in the stock market is consistent with the concept from psychology known as prospect theory, possibly. This concept suggests that people weigh the utilities and risks of gains and losses differently. After the initial setback, Michael has become more tolerant of risk in an effort to make up for his losses. So what do we call that? Is that going to be known as prospect theory, the Allais paradox? Which one is it? So we're going to click on our little help sheet there. We're going to go to the part that we're most interested in. Prospect theory, developed by Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky, suggests that people weigh decisions according to subjective utilities of gains and losses. So we're going with prospect theory. There we go. Which of the following situations may show framing or priming effects? The results of a customer satisfaction survey are influenced by the order of the questions. That's a good example. Employees at a company are more likely to sign for a new benefit if they're automatically enrolled with the option to opt out. Yeah. David's company is struggling and he rejects a job offer from a high paying. That's loss aversion. A person investing in a conservative stock portfolio rather than looking for a better rate from a more aggressive investment. That could be rational, actually. It's not, that's not a problem. And I think we just need a little bit more. And why don't we rack that baby up a little bit higher? You've been entered in a free game where you try to guess the roll of a 6-sided dice. Well, folks, you happen to have a 6-sided dice right here. All right, baby needs a new pair of shoes. If I guess right, I'll win $50. What's the value of that game? Let me see. Well, 1/6 of $50 is $8.33. That's $50 divided by 6. Done. Great. And we're done. Your hot streak, 15 questions correct. You've earned 55 points. I have 100 for the exam.